Vodka Guy.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Deep Dive. Today, we're going to try and unpack something really bizarre.
Oh, yeah.
A murder case that has sparked, well, a lot of online debate.
Yeah.
So imagine this, right? A woman accused of killing her boyfriend
Okay.
during a game of hide and seek.
Oh, wow.
But here's the twist. She allegedly trapped him, get this, in a suitcase.
Wow, that's a new one.
Yeah, so we've got Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres in Winter Park, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
This was back in February 2020.
Okay.
The trial is coming up soon. And so the forums are already, well, buzzing with theories and interpretations of what happened.
Yeah, the forums are really active on this one. I mean, it is a fascinating case.
So what we have is like police reports,
Yeah. Right.
court transcripts.
Usual.
The usual. But we're going to go like beyond that, right?
Yeah.
And look at how people are
I like that.
interpreting the evidence, what they think, forming opinions, all that. Specifically, we're going to look at the Web Sleuths forum.
Yeah, it's like we get this window, right, into the collective mind of the internet as they're all trying to like make sense of this really unusual case.
Exactly. Okay, so let's unpack this thing. One of the first things that really, really jumps out from the forum discussions is Sarah Boone's testimony.
Right.
Users, people like Kitty Bunny on the forums, pointed out that her account seemed very rehearsed, especially like when she was talking about being surprised that someone like Torres would be interested in her.
Yeah.
Like, despite her accomplishments.
Right. Interesting.
It's almost like, how do you even respond to that?
Well, I mean, it's really interesting to think about how a defendant presents themselves on the stand.
Right.
Because that can really, really influence how people perceive them, especially when their demeanor seems at odds with what they're accused of.
Yeah.
Oh.
It makes you wonder how much weight is given to like appearances and, perceived sincerity in these cases.
It's a good question.
And then you've got like the whole discussion around, there's this potential juror, right?
Yeah.
Who some people on the forum believe might be a domestic violence survivor.
Right.
Of course we don't know for sure, but the forum's already like speculating about how that could impact their perspective on the case.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's such a crucial point to bring up, right?
Yeah.
Because it highlights like how much our personal experiences can kind of color our interpretation of events.
Right.
Everyone brings their own baggage to the table.
Yeah.
And in a case like this where, the central issue is alleged abuse, right? I mean, those experiences could play a really significant role in how a juror weighs the evidence.
Absolutely. Speaking of like past experiences, the forum is also buzzing about Sarah Boone's alleged history.
Oh, really?
Apparently her ex-husband, he gave a deposition where he alleged that she had been violent and struggled with alcohol abuse.
Interesting.
Some users, they're questioning like, okay, is this information even relevant to this case?
Yeah.
While others believe that it, kind of paints a clear picture of her character.
Well, that's where things get really complex, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always tricky trying to balance the potential relevance of past behavior with the risk of bias. The legal system has to walk this really fine line between considering all information that's potentially relevant and ensuring that the person gets a fair trial focused specifically on the charges.
Okay, and then we get to, I guess, like the big one here. The defense is they're using the battered spouse syndrome, BSS, as their strategy. They're claiming that Sarah Boone was a victim of abuse.
Right.
And that her actions, they were just a result of the trauma she'd experienced.
Yeah.
But, you look at the forum, a lot of users on the forum are skeptical.
Oh, really?
They're pointing to, well, the cell phone videos that were recovered, where, I mean, she doesn't exactly appear remorseful.
Right. It's, the battered spouse syndrome defense, it's often misunderstood.
Right.
Even demonized. And it's not about condoning violence at all.
Yeah.
But rather it's about explaining how someone who has experienced prolonged abuse, they might react in ways that seem, well, to people who haven't experienced that, they might think it's counterintuitive or even callous.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of understand where the forum's coming from, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's like, well, does this behavior align with, what they perceive to be typical.
Right, exactly.
For, a victim of domestic abuse.
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile sometimes.
So help us understand this like a little better. What actually are the criteria for, like a successful BSS defense?
Okay, yeah.
And how is it typically viewed in court?
So generally speaking, the defense has to demonstrate a few things. A history of abuse, right?
Right.
A perceived threat of harm.
Okay.
And a genuine belief that whatever actions were taken were necessary for self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge for the defense in this particular case is to reconcile Boone's behavior in the videos with, this classic profile of a battered spouse.
Right.
So, again, the forum is questioning whether her actions align with what they think of when they think of domestic abuse.
And to make things even more complicated.
Oh, yeah.
There's this period, like around 11 minutes during the incident.
Okay.
That wasn't captured on video.
Oh, wow. So there's missing footage.
Yeah, the missing footage.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? It's like this giant question mark hanging over the entire case, And the forum is understandably fixated on it.
Yeah. So Boone, she claims that Torres was threatening her during this time, but she didn't record it.
She didn't.
And, the forum's going wild with theories.
Of course they are.
Some think, okay, this supports her claim of abuse.
Right.
Others see it as, well, a major hole in her story.
Oh, yeah. Well, missing footage is always significant, right? Because it creates this void that both sides are going to try and fill, right? So the prosecution might argue that she's hiding something.
Right.
The defense might argue that, well, this actually supports her fear.
Right.
Right. Ultimately, it's up to the jury to decide how much weight to give to this absence of evidence.
Yeah, they're really wrestling with this.
Yeah.
They're asking, like, why didn't she just hit record? If she was genuinely scared, you know? Like, she recorded other parts of their interaction, so what was so different about these 11 minutes?
Good question. Yeah, it's a breeding ground for doubt, right? Because it's not just about what happened, it's about how the story is told.
Yeah.
Whether it resonates as believable.
Right.
It's like this seed of doubt is planted. And so on that note, we've got this other layer here that the forum's dissecting.
Yeah.
Sarah Boone's personality.
Okay.
They're analyzing her ex-husband's testimony.
Okay.
The interactions, in the videos. Trying to understand, like, okay, who is she?
Yeah.
What might have motivated her actions?
Well, this is where the forum delves into amateur psychology.
Right.
They're trying to piece together this psychological profile based on, well, admittedly, limited information.
Yeah.
They're looking for patterns, red flags, anything that might help them, kind of understand the dynamics of this relationship.
Yeah.
And how it could have contributed to this really tragic outcome.
Right. It's like a collective investigation.
Yeah.
They're piecing together a timeline, not just of the events.
But also, like, the emotions, the power dynamics, all those, like, intangible elements.
Right. The stuff that's so hard to capture.
It's really hard.
Yeah. In a legal setting.
So it's like they're creating this mosaic, with each piece representing, like, a fragment of the relationship. They're trying to build this more holistic understanding, going beyond the legal framework to try and grasp those human complexities that might have led to this tragedy. And as they go deeper, they're starting to question whether the legal system's even equipped to handle these nuances of cases like this.
It's a good point, right? Because they're highlighting this fundamental tension between the law, which often, demands this clear-cut evidence, straightforward narratives, and then you have the reality of domestic abuse, which is, it's characterized by, subtle manipulation, psychological coercion, this complex interplay of power dynamics.
They're essentially saying, like, okay, the legal system, it needs to catch up to this.
Yeah, it needs to evolve.
To the complexities of these kinds of relationships.
Right.
Where the abuse might not always be physical.
Right.
But it can be just as, damaging and controlling.
Absolutely. And proving coercive control can be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Especially because it often doesn't leave, any visible scars.
Yeah.
It requires demonstrating, a pattern of behavior, which can be really, really challenging to present convincingly in court.
So we've got all these different perspectives swirling around this case, right? We've got the legal strategies, we've got the public's reactions, the forums, the deep dive into every detail.
Right.
And this overarching conversation about the limitations of the legal system.
Yeah.
When it comes to dealing with domestic violence.
It's a case that goes far beyond the courtroom, right?
Yeah.
It touches on these larger societal issues.
Right.
And it forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths, right? About the nature of abuse, the challenges of seeking justice in a system that often feels inadequate.
It's a case that's sure to generate debate and analysis for years to come.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so compelling, right?
It is.
It's not just about Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres.
Right.
It's about those broader questions that it raises about how we as a society understand and address these really complex issues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, the elephant in the room here is social media.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
This case has just exploded online.
Oh, yeah.
Forum discussions are just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
You've got hashtags, viral videos.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
Endless commentary, flooding every platform imaginable.
It's like the entire internet has become this giant jury.
Yeah.
Deliberating in real time.
Right, exactly.
Everyone's playing armchair detective, right?
Yeah.
Piecing together clues.
Yeah.
Proposing their theories. It's fascinating. But it also raises some serious questions.
Oh, for sure.
About how this digital discourse might be impacting, the actual legal proceedings.
Right. Because even if jurors are told hey, avoid media coverage.
Right.
It's almost impossible to completely shut out all the noise, you know.
Yeah.
In today's world.
It makes you wonder if that constant, buzz of opinions and speculation could subtly influence their perceptions of the case.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely a concern. And then there's the ethical dimension to consider too, right? We're dealing with real people here.
Yeah.
Whose lives have been deeply impacted by this tragedy. And it's easy to get caught up in the sensationalism of the case. But we have to remember that behind the headlines and the forum discussions, there's a family grieving the loss of a loved one.
It's a good reminder to approach these cases with a sense of responsibility and empathy.
Absolutely.
It's not just a puzzle to be solved.
Right.
It's a real life tragedy with lasting consequences.
So circling back, I guess, to our original goal here.
Okay.
How are people reacting to this case?
Yeah.
And what does it tell us about how we as a society, how we understand justice, abuse, the complexities of human behavior?
It's a big one.
All that.
I think the forum discussions, they reveal this genuine struggle to make sense of it all. People are grappling with the evidence, the motivations, the legal arguments, all of it.
Yeah.
They're trying to reconcile what they believe about domestic abuse
with the specifics of this case, and it's leading to some really thought-provoking conversations.
And it seems like there's this real hunger for understanding, right?
Yeah.
Not just the facts of the case, but also those deeper questions it raises.
Absolutely.
About the nature of relationships, the dynamics of power and control.
Right.
The often invisible scars of abuse.
Exactly. And I think that's maybe the most valuable takeaway from this whole deep dive, right? It's not about finding these definitive answers.
Yeah.
Or reaching a consensus.
Right.
It's about acknowledging those complexities.
Right.
Engaging in thoughtful discussion.
Yeah.
And recognizing that cases like this, they often raise more questions than they answer.
It's a good reminder that we all bring our own experiences and biases to the table.
Yeah, we do.
And that even when we're presented with the same information, we might arrive at very different conclusions.
We do. It happens all the time.
It does. It underscores the importance of, critical thinking.
Yeah.
Respectful dialogue.
Yeah.
A willingness to challenge our own assumptions.
So as this trial unfolds, as more information comes to light, I really encourage you to continue exploring the case.
Yeah.
Critically evaluating evidence, forming your own opinions.
Right. And don't just, accept what you read or hear at face value.
Right, exactly.
Dig deeper.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
Be open to changing your mind.
Right.
As new information emerges.
Right. Because ultimately, these kinds of cases, they challenge us, right?
Yeah.
To grapple with these difficult questions about justice, accountability, and the very nature of truth.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
Given the lack of clear-cut evidence here and the emotional complexities of this case, how might jurors navigate their own personal biases and ultimately decide Sarah Boone's fate?
It's a big one.
It's a question that will likely be debated long after the verdict is delivered.
Indeed. This case really serves as a potent reminder that the pursuit of justice, it's rarely simple or straightforward.
Right.
It's a process, right? Fraught with ambiguity, human fallibility, and this constant tension, between seeking truth and ensuring fairness.
Well said. Yeah. And until next time, keep diving deep and keep those critical thinking gears turning.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. It's like the forum, they're not just looking at the big picture. They're zeroing in on specific, words and phrases used in the case. Almost like, legal scholars debating the finer points of terminology.
I noticed that too. Like they're dissecting everything, right?
Yeah.
For instance, there's this whole debate around the word taunting.
Okay.
Boone can be heard saying things in the videos like, that's on you. Mm-hmm. That's what it feels like when you cheat on me.
Okay.
So some people, they think, okay, well, that's certainly harsh.
Right.
But, might not actually meet the legal definition of taunting.
That's precisely why language is so crucial, right, in legal proceedings, because a single word can have multiple interpretations. Yeah. In a court of law, those nuances, they can have a huge impact on how the evidence is perceived and how the law is applied.
It's like a giant game of legal Scrabble. Where every word choice matters.
It does. And speaking of impact, the forum is seriously concerned about how all this, media attention could influence the jury.
Of course, yeah. They're worried that jurors might be swayed, by public opinion or the shocking nature of the case itself.
Well, that's a valid concern, right? It's almost impossible to completely shield jurors from the constant, buzz of information and opinions surrounding, these high-profile cases.
Especially this one.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if it's even possible to find, truly impartial jurors in the age of social media.
Yeah, where everyone has an opinion and a platform to share it.
Right. And the forum is also picking up on, these subtle details that might not be obvious, to a casual observer.
Right.
Like Boone's body language, for example.
Okay.
During her testimony.
Oh, interesting.
Some users, they're interpreting her seemingly calm demeanor as a sign of guilt.
Okay.
While others see it as, maybe a coping mechanism or even a sign of shock.
Ah, yes, the perils of reading body language.
It's so tempting, though.
It is. Yeah. But it's so unreliable. What one person might perceive as coldness. Right. Another person might interpret it as fear or emotional numbness. Yeah. Especially in a high-pressure situation like a trial. Yeah. Where someone is, facing serious consequences. Yeah. It's almost impossible to accurately, read their emotional state just based on their body language.
It's like everyone's become this armchair psychologist, trying to analyze every glance, every gesture, looking for some hidden meaning.
Looking for those tells. Yeah. Yeah, but as you said, it's a slippery slope. And this is where, those individual biases we talked about, they come into play. Yeah. If someone already believes that Boone is guilty, they're more likely to interpret her body language as confirming that belief.
Absolutely. So how do we even separate these subjective interpretations?
Yeah.
From the objective facts of the case. Yeah. Is there even a way to do that when we're dealing with human behavior, which is, well, it's inherently complex.
Yeah, it is.
And often contradictory.
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And ultimately, it's the jury's job to do that, right? They have to sift through all the evidence, the testimony, the arguments, and try to discern what really happened. They have to decide, whether the prosecution has proven guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's an incredibly difficult task, especially in a case like this, where there are so many layers of complexity and ambiguity.
Which brings us back to the defense's, strategy here.
Okay.
They're trying to convince the jury, right?
Yeah.
That Sarah Boone was a victim of abuse.
Okay.
But the forum is pointing out that some of her actions after Torres' death are difficult.
Okay.
To reconcile with that.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
For example, like she allegedly waited several hours.
Oh, wow.
Before calling 911.
That's a key detail.
Right.
That the prosecution will almost certainly focus on.
Right.
They'll likely argue that a truly innocent person, right, someone who accidentally, caused harm while defending themselves, would immediately seek help.
Right.
So the defense is going to have to, they're going to have to provide a compelling explanation for that delay.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll argue that she was in shock, or that she feared the consequences of calling the authorities.
It's a crucial moment in the timeline.
It is.
That will likely be scrutinized, from every angle.
From every angle.
And speaking of scrutiny,
the
forum is also, deeply invested in analyzing, the relationship dynamic between Boone and Torres.
Right.
They're combing through, everything.
Yeah.
Every text message, every social media post.
Wow.
Every shred of information they can find.
Right.
Trying to, shed light on the nature of their interactions.
It's fascinating to see how the forum is engaging in this kind of collaborative investigation, right?
It is.
They're like this hive mind collectively piecing together a timeline of the relationship. And it's not just a timeline of events, right?
Right.
It's a timeline of emotions, power dynamics, all those intangible elements.
Yeah, it's really hard to capture.
That are so hard to capture in a legal setting.
It's like they're creating this digital mosaic, with each piece representing a fragment of the relationship.
I see.
They're trying to build this more holistic understanding, going beyond just the legal framework to try and grasp those human complexities that might have led to this tragedy. And as they delve deeper, they start to question, is the legal system, is it even equipped to handle these nuances of cases like this?
That's a crucial point. I mean, the forum is highlighting this fundamental tension, right, between the law, which often demands this clear-cut evidence, straightforward narratives, and then the reality of domestic abuse, which is often characterized by this subtle manipulation, psychological coercion, and this complex interplay of power dynamics.
They're essentially saying, the legal system, it needs to catch up.
Yeah, it needs to evolve.
To these complexities of these relationships, where the abuse, it might not always be physical, but it can be just as, damaging and controlling.
Absolutely. And proving coercive control, it can be incredibly difficult, especially since it often doesn't leave any visible scars. It requires demonstrating this pattern of behavior, which can be really challenging to present convincingly in court.
So we've got all these different perspectives swirling around this case, right?
Oh, I do.
You've got the legal strategies. You've got the public's reactions.
Right.
The forum's deep dive into every detail.
Yeah.
And this overarching conversation about the limitations of the legal system when it comes to dealing with domestic violence.
It's a case that goes far beyond the courtroom.
It does.
It touches on these larger societal issues.
It does.
And it forces us to confront, some uncomfortable truths, right?
Yeah.
About the nature of abuse.
Yeah.
The challenges of seeking justice in a system that often feels inadequate.
It's a case that's sure to generate debate.
It is.
an analysis
Yeah.
for years to come.
I think so.
And that's what makes it so compelling, right?
It is. It's not just about Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres. It's about these broader questions that it raises about how we as a society understand and address these complex issues. It's a case that's going to generate debate and analysis for years to come, I think.
I think so, too. And that's what makes it so fascinating, right?
It is.
It's not just about Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres.
No, it's not.
It's about the bigger picture.
Right.
The questions.
Right, yeah.
It raises for society.
Absolutely. And we can't forget, I mean, the elephant in the room here really is social media.
Right.
I mean, this case has just exploded online.
It really has.
The forum discussions are just one little piece of the puzzle.
Right.
You've got the hashtags, you've got the viral videos.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
Endless commentary just flooding every platform imaginable.
Yeah, it's like the entire internet has become this giant jury.
Yeah.
Just deliberating in real time.
That's a great way to put it.
Everyone's an armchair detective, piecing together their clues and coming up with their own theories.
Yeah, it's fascinating, but it also raises some serious questions.
It does.
About how this digital discourse might be impacting, the actual legal proceedings.
Right, because even if jurors are instructed to avoid media coverage, it's almost impossible to completely shut out the noise.
It is.
In today's world.
Especially in today's world, yeah.
It makes you wonder if that constant buzz of opinions and speculation could even subconsciously influence their perceptions of the case.
Absolutely. It's definitely a concern. And then there's the ethical dimension to consider too, right?
Oh, right.
I mean, we're dealing with real people here.
Yeah.
Whose lives have been deeply impacted by this tragedy.
Of course.
It's easy to get caught up in the sensationalism of the case, but we have to remember that behind the headlines and the forum discussions, there's a family grieving the loss of a loved one.
It's a good reminder to approach these cases with a sense of responsibility.
It is.
And empathy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just a puzzle to be solved,
Right.
It's a real-life tragedy with lasting consequences.
For sure.
So circling back, I guess, to our original goal here.
Okay, yeah.
How are people reacting to this case, and what does it tell us about how we as a society understand justice, abuse the complexities of human behavior?
Well, I think the forum discussions, they reveal this genuine struggle to make sense of it all.
They do.
People are grappling with the evidence, the motivations, the legal arguments.
Yeah.
They're trying to reconcile what they believe about domestic abuse with the specifics of this case.
Right.
And it's leading to some really thought-provoking conversations.
It seems like there's this hunger for understanding, not just the facts of the case,
but
the deeper questions it raises.
Absolutely.
About the nature of relationships, the dynamics of power and control.
For sure.
The often invisible scars of abuse.
Exactly. And I think that's maybe the most valuable takeaway from this deep dive.
I think so, too.
It's not about finding those definitive answers or reaching a consensus. It's about acknowledging the complexities, engaging in thoughtful discussion, and recognizing that cases like this often raise more questions than they answer.
And it's a good reminder that we all bring our own experiences and biases to the table.
We do.
And that even when presented with the same information, we might arrive at very different conclusions.
We do. It happens all the time.
It does. It underscores the importance of critical thinking, respectful dialogue.
Yes.
A willingness to challenge our own assumptions.
Absolutely.
As this trial unfolds and as more information comes to light, I encourage you to continue exploring the case.
Yeah.
Critically evaluating the evidence and forming your own informed opinions.
Right.
Don't just accept what you read or hear at face value.
Absolutely not.
Dig deeper. Ask questions. Be open to changing your mind as new information emerges.
Because ultimately, these kinds of cases, they challenge us.
Yeah, they do.
To grapple with these difficult questions about justice, accountability, the very nature of truth.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
Given the lack of clear-cut evidence here and the emotional complexities of this case, how might jurors navigate their own personal biases and ultimately decide Sarah Boone's fate? It's a question that will likely be debated long after the verdict is delivered.
Indeed, this case really serves as a potent reminder that that the pursuit of justice,
yes,
it's rarely simple or straightforward.
No, it's not.
It's a process fraught with ambiguity, human fallibility.
Yeah.
And this constant tension, between seeking truth and ensuring fairness.
Well said. Well, until next time, keep diving deep.
Yes, keep diving.
And keep those critical thinking gears turning.
Absolutely.
Avant-garde.